Joyful Talk is a junked analog microclimate trance music duo based on the South Shore of Nova Scotia, Canada. Consisting of Jay Crocker and Shawn Dicey, each Calgary transplants to the Maritimes, Joyful Talk create singular music because so much of their instrumentation has been invented or modified by these two guys who then revel in a conversational interplay derived from their own unique musical language. Joyful Talk's second and new album is called Plurality Trip, which was released by Constellation Records in August of 2018, and it's prompted the band to tour the world extensively. Jay and Shawn and I met recently in the E1 studio in Toronto for a conversation about the South Shore, Calgary, how they met, how they do what they do, and why they do those things. Lobster zones and acid-washed underpants. Plurality Trip, what's up next, and much more. With the support of listeners like you who subscribe to this podcast and spread the word about it, and make flexible monthly pledges at patreon.com/creative control, plus in-kind support from CFRU 93.3 FM, Pizza Trokadero, The Bookshelf, and Planet Bean Coffee in Guelph, and Grandad's Donuts in Hamilton. This is the 441st episode of Creative Control, featuring the enigmatically wise Jay Crocker and Shawn Dicey of Joyful Talk with your host, me, Vish Khanna. Hi guys, how's it going?
Good.
Good.
How are you?
I'm all right. I'm feeling better now that you helped me tech the show.
Yeah.
Because there's another issue with the tech, and it worked out well. I think for the people listening, we should, you two, in fact, because they're used to hearing me, should introduce yourselves individually. So why don't we start over here?
I'm Shawn Dicey, and I'm here with Joyful Talk.
Nice to... Thanks for stating your affiliation. Yeah. That's great.
Wasn't sure how...
I'm Joyful Talk.
The introduction.
you are Joyful Talk.
No, I am Jay Crocker.
Jay, Shawn, nice to speak with you. Now, the first time I was introduced to you, Shawn, I was told to call you Dicey.
That's my last name.
Yeah, no,
Shawn Dicey.
Yeah, I know, but is that what people call you?
A lot of people do call me Dicey.
Is it okay if I call you Dicey every once in a while? Do you call him Dicey, Jay?
Oh, yeah. Most people do.
Okay.
In and out. But most people
call him Dicey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The first time I think I saw Joyful Talk might have been in Halifax at a house show, and I feel like Aaron Mangle was playing with you in a basement. Is that possible?
I don't think
he wasn't in the band.
Yeah.
He wasn't in the band? Was he just there?
It was his basement.
Oh, it was his basement. Okay.
So he definitely was there.
Okay. And so, and that was that an early incarnation of this?
It was our first or second show, probably.
Are you saying
with Will?
Yeah.
Yeah. Will Vandermeulen played with us probably for the first year of this.
Yeah.
Okay, that's maybe why I thought it was a three-piece in my head. Right. Okay. So where did this group, if it's a group, where did it come from exactly? I believe, Jay, is this your conception on some level?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. And so where did it emerge from, per se?
I guess it was born out of the forests of southwestern Nova Scotia.
Right. Yeah. Because I know you as a Calgary person.
Yeah, and so is Dicey.
You're both from Calgary?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so how did you end up on the South Shore of Nova Scotia? Southwestern, sorry, to be
South
specific.
Shore.
I know it is the South Shore.
It is.
I go there sometimes.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's very remote and lovely, and there's water.
Yeah,
there's lakes and stuff.
It's incredible.
Yeah. So how did you end up in that area from Calgary, both of you?
I moved there about 7 years ago, almost 7.5 years ago. I actually toured out there and had played at John McKeel's house.
Okay.
And he was living out there. And my wife and I were, tossing around the idea of getting out of Alberta.
Is John? I think of John as like a New Brunswick, Nova Scotia type person. Is he?
He's from Amherst.
He's from where?
Amherst, Nova Scotia.
Okay, so he's from Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
When you mentioned
He's
him,
the king of Nova Scotia, actually.
Yeah, but so Jay went out to visit him.
Oh, just to visit.
in
I was
Nova Scotia,
touring.
yeah.
Oh, you were touring.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I had played with John in Calgary, and then so when we were setting up the tour, I asked John if he could, help me out with some of the East Coast stuff.
Okay.
And then so I played at his house, and I don't know, we just kind of fell in love with it. I did anyways. And then my wife, when we were deciding to move out of Calgary, my wife went to visit and look for real estate because, it's fairly affordable, especially with the mindset that I had when I was living in Calgary, where everything was getting really, really expensive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then but in Nova Scotia reality, it's it's still kind of the same, but manageable. As far as
the price points, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, like in
you know
Nova
what I mean? Like coming from Calgary, we're just like, oh my God, this is only $100,000, $150,000. That's amazing.
Right.
Where everything in Calgary is like $450,000.
Similar, like a similar
sort
size.
of, but you're
place.
not even going to get anything close to
Right.
that. Like you get way more in Nova Scotia, but you're entering like a life of, it's like a maintenance existence.
Because
Which I really
fix
love.
up this
Fixing everything.
house.
Fixing the audio, fixing the cars, fixing the plumbing.
Is there a lot of audio problems in Nova Scotia that you have to fix?
Oh,
Yeah.
No, those actually mostly happen in Toronto.
Because we don't know what we're doing. We don't know how to work with our hands and our minds the way you
Yeah.
do in Nova Scotia.
So I was out there, and we ended up out there. It was ended up in this house in a really interesting way, like a private owner from one of the people who really kind of is embedded in the community there, Jesse Watson. He has like a skateboard company called Homegrown.
Mm-hmm.
And
Are you a skater?
I was when I was like in junior high.
Right. I just started up again.
Yeah.
I'm 40 now. My son is 7, and he wanted to skateboard. So I was never very good at it when I was...
I was not bad, but
You could do all the tricks and the stuff?
not all the tricks, but
Yeah.
I was into like stairs and stuff.
Yeah, I can't do that stuff.
I could never do any kind of tricks.
Looks terrifying to me.
I would never do it.
He
now.
immediately, that's all he wants to do.
Right.
It's just, he's like, I'm like, you've not even demonstrated that you can skate across a flat surface. He's like, no, I want to go, we go to the skate park in Guelph,
Yeah.
and he wants to do all the...
Yeah, Jesse has a bowl built above the LaHave Bakery.
Oh, okay.
So I bought his old house, and it kind of, I don't know, it's a great energy in Crosstown.
Okay. So it's partially the reality of Calgary real estate, I suppose, that drew you out of that city.
Yeah, but it was also, I don't know, I felt I just needed to get out of there.
Just generally.
Just generally, overall, I felt like I wanted to try something else.
Okay. And I want to follow up on some of what you just said in a moment, but Dicey, what about you? Did you just follow Jay, or what made you leave Calgary?
No, I've been there about 4.5 years.
Right.
And I'd seen Nova Scotia a little bit, but it was visiting Jay shortly before I wound up moving there.
Dicey was touring an art show like across North America.
What kind of art do you make?
That was a public installation piece that toured some Nuit Blanche type projects. We did the one in Halifax, that tour, as well as others. Nocturne in Halifax. Yeah, that's what's called.
What is the actual medium? I suppose
the piece was 2 scissor lifts with actors on them being town criers, and people submitted messages all night, and the town criers broadcast them to the crowd.
Oh,
like yelling them.
Right.
Through a megaphone, like through a passive megaphone.
Okay.
So we toured that. That was a project or a group called Sophie Farewell out of Calgary, 4 artists. We had a few projects like that.
Okay.
And toured it around. But when I was in Nova Scotia, I went to visit Jay.
Like during the Nocturne kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
You had
Well, I
some
was
time
there for
between festivals.
Oh,
So
I
he
see.
came
Stayed
out
for maybe 5 days.
And did you knew of each other? Were you friends in
Yeah.
Calgary?
Yeah.
Okay.
We've certainly become closer since I've moved out there.
But really close kind of mutual friends, and like we'd had some interactions.
Same, yeah.
I mean, Jay, I know some of your solo work, but you have played in bands of some renown, and Dicey, I assume you have too. Do you mind, Dicey, do you mind talking about some of the bands you've played with?
I guess, well, I played with Lab Coast for quite a while in Calgary before I left, and that is Chris Dadge, who...
just on this show.
Just on the show.
Like in July. He was with Chad. Yeah.
And he's like probably one of my best friends.
Oh, nice.
We went to high school together, and we've played in a lot of bands over the years, and he's played with Jake quite a bit.
Okay.
So that's part of our mutual circle, like tight little circle.
And Jay, what about you? I mean, like I said, you have your own
stuff. And then Ghost Keeper.
Right.
No More Shapes. John McKeel.
Right, okay. Sometimes
Dicey plays in John McKeel.
Sometimes you play with Steve Lamke, my friend.
Yep. And then Cousins. We did a short stint as the rhythm section for Cousins.
Oh.
Yeah, recently.
Yeah.
So wait a minute. What instrument? Oh, that was recently.
Yeah, he was playing drums. I was playing bass.
Oh, you were playing drums. Okay.
Yeah, I was playing drums. And we played one show where Bianca Palmer played drums, and I played bass, and you played guitar.
Yeah.
Cousins is in some kind of configuration zone where it's changing all the time.
It's in a flexible time.
Also, was a
two-piece.
Lobster
zone right now.
What's the Lobster zone? That's a weird Maritimes thing I've not heard before. Lobster zone, is that a thing?
Yeah.
No one's ever described that to me before.
He's in the Lobster zone
to
for
describe
sure.
it to you.
So the show I saw in the house, which sounds like it might have been one of the earlier shows, I think I reviewed it. Didn't I write a review of it for Exclaim? I feel like I did.
I think so.
Yeah, did I say nice things? I feel like I liked it a lot.
Pretty wild.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that.
It was a wild set. It was really great. And so how did you come up, like the projects you've described, I think, to generalize, are pretty song-oriented, lyric-oriented. How did you two end up?
Well, I was like involved quite a bit in like the improvised music scene and jazz and free jazz, and
which is Chris Dadge. Chris Dadge was pretty instrumental in that stuff too.
Yeah. So I played on like a couple of the first Bug Incision things, and like we went to school together.
You and Chris?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
They went to college together.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. So you grew up with him a little bit.
Yeah, and then that's how our
high school.
connection
I see.
happened, is through Chris.
Oh, okay.
And then just the whole, like the Calgary music scene was at the time pretty small as far as, like there was a lot of great things happening, but there was kind of everybody knew each other.
Do you miss Calgary, either of you?
I don't.
I was just there for like a few hours as we're speaking. It would have been, well, it was in August. I know it was in August. And we got a tour of the National Music Center for free. So that was fun. And then I went to Tubby Dog with my family. Is that a cool thing to do, or do you guys look down upon Tubby Dog as a touristy?
I always liked it.
Okay.
I like the wasabi one.
Okay, so it's not, I just wondered if I was like, hey guys.
But I mean, I like a hot dog, like.
But I've played there a lot too. As a venue, it's great. And
yeah, I went to a show there during Sled Island. Yeah,
it's definitely cool.
Okay, so you do, when I had Chad and his friends on the show, they didn't seem to have the warmest, they still live in Calgary, and they didn't have the warmest things to say about it.
I miss the people.
You miss the people?
A lot of people that I mean, I don't constantly like sit around worrying about people, but I mean, like, you know what I mean?
You don't have a lot of empathy, really.
There's
you don't just sit around.
And people, and
yeah,
just having lived there for a long time, it's natural. But I feel 100% where I live now. Like, I know that it's the way I want to live and the place I want to be. Like, it's all working out. And I think the way that we've worked together to create music and time and space, like, there's no other situation for it. Like, we interact with so few people where we live that, like, you can really manipulate how you're focused.
You're constantly manipulating your own environment, like, to a scale of, it's just, there's a lot of space, there's a lot of forest, there's a lot of materials that you can use to, and then there's just like a lot of space for your mind.
Do you live in a different house?
Yeah.
Okay.
I bought some property not far from Jay.
Okay.
A wooded lot.
And do you have like a family, so to speak?
I have a wife.
You have a wife?
Yeah,
And
from that area that I met since I moved there.
oh, wow.
We got married this summer.
Oh, that's congratulations.
Yeah,
That's
thanks.
amazing. Wow.
And
love story. All of a sudden
she's
it's a love story. I didn't expect that.
a nurse of Nova Scotia, an RN. And it just, it feels like things are building. I'm starting to get some animals, and
You're starting to get some animals, like
we got
domestic
chickens.
animals?
Yeah, we got a cat.
Oh, okay.
We got chickens. Jay's got the same kind of thing.
Yeah, I got a dog and a cat and chickens, 2 kids.
So you,
You
two kids.
start
Oh.
producing your own food, and
Huh. So when you...
So I think that when I was doing a lot of improv in Calgary towards maybe the last couple of years, I was really starting to like build instruments and stuff, and just using those on the improv nights, just picking one thing. And
what kind of instruments would you build?
just like little like circuit bent instruments and little oscillators and little noise makers and drum machines and stuff. So just using those. And then like when I moved to Nova Scotia, there wasn't like in that particular zone, there's not much of like an improvised music scene. So
in Nova Scotia?
yeah, well, no, I would say just like we're about an hour and 15 minutes southwest of Halifax.
And so isn't Chris Ludica, Old Man Ludica, from around that area?
He lives over there.
He lives near you?
He lives in Chester. So it's
Chester,
like
right.
45 minutes.
Oh, it's 45 minutes away. Okay.
Like closer to Halifax.
So the music, there's not a particular music scene where you're currently living. You have to go to Sackville or Halifax or something to pick up on that.
Don't really, yeah. So I just started scoring for these. Like I started developing like notation systems and like between like a hybrid notation system between like, the classic written musical note to like how I was going to remember how to perform these pieces using those instruments that I made. So I kind of fleshed out their sounds, and like the first record, Muix, was me kind of performing all the stuff with these crude instruments.
Are they the kind of instruments that have a fleeting sound to them? Like if you make a noise once, it might not make the same noise again?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
But I mean, for me, that's not really important to have the exact same sound. It's more of just the essence of the energy of the sound. So
you both are play. I would suppose it's safe to say like conventional instruments as well, like things that have tunings, and I mean they can be manipulated, of course, as well. But you play things that we've come to accept that they're going to sound a certain way. Yeah. Were you getting bored with that stuff, and that's why you're like, I'm going to try to create my own sounds with my own machines that I'm going to make ostensibly from scratch?
I don't know if it was boredom. I think it's just exploratory.
And I think I am open to playing all kinds of instruments, and when I started seeing what Jay was doing and working on, like Muix is the sort of the product of that level, I think, of what you developed it to. And so I was hearing Muix when we started learning those songs.
Trying to learn how to play it.
Yeah. So when I saw you, it wasn't improvised when I would have seen that show, right? Is it often it's in the moment, isn't it?
We're playing songs. Like there's certainly improvised sections or improvised flexibility.
Okay.
But I think it was you had sort of laid out, or Jay had sort of laid out a section of instruments. So it was sort of a matter of learning how to fulfill those instruments.
Sound there that's like started off being very sort of like it was only a certain number. It was 14 sounds, 14 instruments making their, well, not 14 sounds, but like 14 instruments making their vast amount of sounds. But it was kind of whittled down, and then so it had a decent foundation of how the kind of pieces were going to evolve. But then once you start performing them live, and that was a huge learning curve too, trying to figure out how to play them. And we played some of the worst music I've ever played during that period.
Because you didn't know what was going to happen?
It was just...
We were trying a lot of, like, for instance, you used some toy guitars, plastic guitars in the recording. And that's a sound that we tried to use a lot. And touring with them, was a nightmare.
Yeah, just
they're too fragile. They're too hard to control. You can't get parts to work.
So
that's sort of how I, like in this unit, that's how I got into needing samplers more. I mean, sequencing was always part of it, but we have morphed in a live setting into pretty advanced MIDI connection.
Yeah.
But
none of it is
all kind of morphed, I think, that way.
The whole ethos of it is to, like, I don't ever want to be controlled by it as far as, like, a 4 on the floor kind of thing, or, like, I always want to play with the time. Always want to play with time signature and, like, make it so we're actually molding it and playing it as if it was, like, you know, playing Thunderstruck or something
so,
like that.
And so there's room for it to... I don't know, be or have like an organic feel and time to it, like the way a drummer might have an off night or something, and you're like, well, I got to play with whatever they're doing right now. Yeah.
It's always it's just a complete. It's also like a very sort of spiritual thing for me as well. Like I feel like this music is the closest I've been to how I want to feel the world in that way.
What does that say about your worldview per se? Can you articulate that? When you say you want to feel the world,
well, it's just like as deep as I can be in like a certain moment, I guess. Without, it's like where there's no it's like true clarity or something.
You're talking about improvisation. You're talking about improvisation from the mentality of many of its, I don't know, best or most respected proponents. This notion of being in the moment and not feeling trapped by any parameter.
Yeah, that's kind of how it is.
Yeah. So
there are some technical parameters, but for the most part it's like, and coming from that sort of school of improvisation where nothing is going to trap you because there is no limitation. There's always somewhere to go.
Does this speak to, and I don't want to be too literal or psychological about this, but you say, I gather you wanted to leave Calgary because you felt like you'd had enough? And maybe it was a paradigm that you felt like you couldn't move beyond on some level. Whereas Nova Scotia, when you moved to Nova Scotia, and what you're saying now, what Dicey was saying too, like living off the land a little bit, creating your own personal infrastructure, so to speak. You know,
I think I had to figure out who I actually was and who I wanted to be when I was there, when I first moved. I mean, it was a big learning curve for me. There was some deep depression, deep isolation that I'd never ever felt before, or maybe had been building.
But you were there with your family.
Oh, yeah.
But I was going to ask about this because I think in some of the biographical information about this new record, or perhaps the band generally, there's I think a few sentences about how you built some of these instruments so you could basically have something to communicate with as a musician. You were by yourself, and these things were...
that was kind of the genesis of Muix, I guess.
Right, okay.
So now it's moved beyond that.
Okay, because you have Dicey and...
Yeah, definitely. And just the process has just tightened into like, it's still, you know, it's like constant maintenance, constant fixing and moving. But to this point now, I just feel like, yeah, it's a comfortable place for me to be.
Dicey, what's your perception of where Jay's coming from with this stuff? Because that's a very personal kind of admission that he's just made about what this music says about him. Like, I mean, you're working with him and now you're collaborating, I presume, more closely with... You two are collaborating more closely than you would have in the initial stages,
yeah, it's
maybe?
really it's easy, though. It's like
it's loose. Okay, so...
I mean, if you're there, we'll set out, we'll record for a few days, and, you know, we'll pull some stuff from that, or we won't, or...
Yeah.
It's been pretty easy.
Does what he's saying about his kind of philosophical outlook about this band and life generally, do you relate to that? Do you have your own... Is there something different about your approach?
It's just the way it came together that worked out. Like the gear, I've had a project, a solo project for a few years called Dice Parks, and the gear that I was using to create that was kind of came out of my setup for pretty straight up improvisational stuff, like guitar pedals and noise making stuff, and that set of gear has grown in this project in a way that's... I think it complemented so quickly what Jay was doing that it quickly became the same thing. Like mine grew into his, And there's no other way to describe it. Like the setup that we have now, like what Jay's talking about, this single clarity and stuff, is like what I felt with guitar, you know, in the past, where you can forget you're playing a guitar and you're playing music, like you're playing beyond what your hands, and this is definitely the closest I felt to this kind of gear. Like even though it's guitar pedals, keyboards, I'm not playing like virtuosic parts, but I'm in touch to a deep level where like it's a major rush. Like it is like, you know, playing any instrument now, and it just keeps growing. Like there's no limits.
It's like when you're working and doing like electrical work in your house, or you're doing plumbing or something like that, or fixing an amplifier. It's all, for me, it's like, I really like enjoy the idea of energy modification, like energy flow modification.
In this
so
case,
even like
literally electrical energy at this point, like
or like, you know, a more spiritual energy.
Are you like you're obviously a spiritual person on some level?
I don't know.
The spirituality has a negative connotation for some.
Yeah.
But you are clearly
care.
You don't care about what? That it has
if people think that it's a negative thing.
No, I'm just saying often it can be aligned. I invoke the phrase philosophy, which I think that's a major
I think
aspect.
Fun could be associated
Fun
with
can be
that
yes,
too,
absolutely,
like,
absolutely.
It's just I don't know.
So does Joyful Talk?
I'm not a deeply spiritual person. I would say like I'm a thoughtful person.
But that can be spiritual too.
Yeah, but I just feel like as far as music goes, I want to let go as much as possible into, like, I call it the acid wash underpants.
Is that like the lobster zone?
Yeah.
Are you in the lobster zone?
It's kind of perpendicular.
It's like,
to
imagine
the
if there was
zone.
like acid washed, just like a giant acid wash, like curtain flying over us at all times. You could just like reach your hand up.
Right.
That's like what I feel is happening.
I see. Okay, that's fascinating.
Okay.
So, does it stand to reason that Joyful Talk is your primary mode of expression? Since discovering this, it sounds like it's changed you.
I don't know if it's like, it's just part of it.
So are you doing other things? Is there J. Crocker
There's
music?
some art stuff. There's some like, it's just, for me, it's all encompassing because of where the location of where I live definitely is truly informing this project, like beyond anything else I've ever been a part of.
Okay.
Because it's just like there's so much struggle at the same time. Like,
there's struggle.
Oh, yeah. Like there's just a lot of obstacles. There's a lot of challenges. There's a lot of times where I have to use all my creativity to like fix a water problem because we don't have enough water because the water runs out in our well in the summers when it's dry. And I don't want to like spend $100 a week like getting it filled. So there's like, figuring out how to like make all that stuff work so we can still live fairly comfortably. And
so are you two saying on some level that your home ownership, your life existence, and the stuff you have to do to function as a person who owns a house and is a human being who has to get up every day and deal with the day, I'm trying to figure out if that is informing Joyful Talk, or is the process of Joyful Talk and what you've discovered in your exploration of this, is that informing how you approach a toilet that needs fixing?
It's all the same to me.
That's now all the same.
Yeah. It always was. I think
it
all
just flows both ways at least.
A toilet will flow.
Yeah.
Hopefully not both ways, but yeah.
Sometimes it does.
Sometimes it does, and that's when you gotta fix it.
And there's other semi-emergencies that, like not serious emergencies, but different things in living in the woods or in isolation that you have to deal with on your own.
Yeah.
And
like yourself.
you get thrown in to bigger challenges.
Do you get bears and moose and stuff?
No.
Not really bears
they're
and
not,
moose.
They're not
It's
that.
just the odd bear, but
rust and rot.
There is the odd bear?
Yeah, in Nova Scotia for sure. Yeah.
But you haven't encountered one?
No.
Okay.
They're not far from us.
So you see a bear coming towards you. Do you say to yourself, what would Joyful Talk do? Like, what would I do?
A riddle?
No, not necessarily. I just wonder if you apply, or you have an ornery
like that.
cashier or something,
I mean,
and you're like,
it's just, it's not like that.
There's a lot going on. A lot going on.
Well, I mean, this
just life,
I don't
yeah.
normally ask
It's
people.
probably that simple. I'm
Just a
maybe
different
making
set
it
of-
too complicated.
I don't normally ask people about monikers or in terms of. It sometimes has come up in the course of an interview if someone's named something that intrigues me, but. I feel like what we've been discussing maybe speaks to why this would be called Joyful Talk, but I don't know. What is that a reference to?
There's a little. I bought like a van for my trip over from Calgary to Nova Scotia.
Yeah, oh yeah? Just for the
And
trip?
it was a Toyota Hiace. And it was like a Japanese import van from the early 90s. And like it had a button that was an intercom system where you could talk to the passengers
Oh,
in
wow.
the back.
Cool.
And it was called the Joyful Talk button.
That's what it was called? I've never heard that before.
Yeah, it was
Oh.
just a Joyful Talk, all capitals, like the way it is.
One word?
No
One
rude
word,
announcements.
Wow. That's cool. I've never heard that
And then
before.
so, I don't know.
But it does
Seems
seem to
right.
me that's weird. So maybe I'm just reading into it based on our conversation. But you talk about spirituality, finding yourself, communication. What all of this seems to be
But
encapsulated.
that's the name of the record. I guess the name of the record ties in more to those sort of
How
ideas.
so?
Well, it's just like how we can exist in so many different ways all
Yeah.
at the same time.
Right. Okay. And it's a trip.
Yeah, sure is.
Do you feel like we've lost sight of that? Maybe as a people, this
I
notion
think
that
we're
there are
afraid
multitudes.
of. I think we've been afraid of it. I think people have been put in like mental institutions for like those kinds of ideas and like split personality disorder and all that kind of shit. It's like, and then now there's like the virtual selves too, which is fucking with everybody.
like Sims or
Just like
oh
Facebook.
Oh,
and,
right.
like,
Yeah, that's
the
true.
internet. Like,
Right. We have avatars.
who are we on that?
Right.
You know?
Are you on those things?
A little bit. I don't have like a smartphone or anything, but
So do you feel like that's? Do you just? I sometimes when I post something like that, over time I will. If I'm looking back on it, I'll feel like I've learned something about myself that I didn't expect. Like, oh, I guess that's like something. Facebook's the worst because it'll be like, 7 years ago you said this.
yeah.
I'm like, yeah, thanks for reminding me that I
I
love
haven't
my
been
dead cat.
on it that much
Right,
for it to tell me that stuff.
right, okay.
And I do like the Joyful Talk Instagram.
Oh, you do?
Yes, but
Right.
I guess that's kind of needed these days.
Yeah,
I
it seems to be. So, if
But I
you-
think it's like good and bad. Like I'm not totally afraid of it.
right.
I don't think it's like this fucking horrible thing.
It's just another thing.
It's just a part of our evolution as humans, I think.
The plurality.
Yeah.
It's just a part of the plurality.
Yeah, it's just the splintering of everything.
Okay. Dicey, where do you think Joyful Talk will go next? Do you have a sense of that? I mean, this is a thing that's always, it seems to me that it's shifting in its current form, the songs even. But do you have a sense of what's next? Have you already begun working on maybe a follow-up to Plurality Trip?
Yeah, I guess we kind of know where we're starting right now. But that's kind of just a point on a line, I guess. So yeah, I think we know where it's flowing, how it's going.
You learn things from making this record in terms of how you might apply them to
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
anything you can articulate, though, at this point? Like, are there things...
Well, there's no computers really on. Most of them are just live performances, like 5 tracks of just us playing the stuff.
Right.
I mean, there's some editing, and there's one track that has more overdubs than most of the other tracks on there, or it's like recording jams to like a 1/4-inch machine,
Mhm.
and then taking those and resampling them, and then
Mhm,
performing that kind of thing.
And then that's like sort of an interesting layering of taking things we're playing and then through sampling and sequencing and middying, being able to play past performances in a way.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
That's the other thing, is like trying to make it so we don't have to rehearse.
Sure. That's the goal, of course. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
being able to play it, basically.
Yeah, so I want to be able to anyways to play a lot of this stuff. I mean, it's still evolving as we play it
Yeah,
now, but
right.
like we played it, and then that's kind of how we play it.
Right. Okay. And so in terms of sending people to learn more about Joyful Talk, the band, not the intercom system. Where Instagram is that, and I guess cstrecords.com, the Constellation site, and anywhere else. Do you have
just come to the shows? I guess whenever we decide to leave.
Come.
Do you have more shows coming up? You're going to be touring a little bit.
Yeah, we're going back to Europe in November, and then there's I think might be some Asia stuff next winter.
Oh, nice.
Spring.
Is it true that the European audiences or promoters, I suppose, even seem to embrace what you were doing, maybe more so than here, North America?
We've been having really good shows.
Yeah. Europe's been, we've been 4 times, I think, and maybe like twice to Toronto or once.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And so, and there's
it's just way easier.
For some, there's because of the electronic impulses behind it, I think some people might think of it as a kind of dance music. Do you subscribe to that?
Oh, I don't care.
It's certainly
a good attitude.
It's
they don't
that
care.
Way
they can
at times.
Yeah, they can hear it and feel it any way they want.
I find that
some people find it really like challenging, but I don't find it challenging at all. I think like if people can hear on like the 5 o'clock news about people getting like raped and murdered and stuff, I think they could open their ears a little bit to maybe something that's not, I don't know.
You guys are you've played with Holy Fuck, right? Are you
just one show?
Just one show. Do you consider them contemporaries in some way? Because they do some similar aspects to what you're doing.
There's more song. It seems more
populist than what you're doing, I would say. But I've seen them sort of evolve from what I thought was kind of an electronic noise rock thing to these sort of danceable things where people lose their minds.
Yeah,
and
I don't know if we'd ever go. Maybe, I don't know.
No, I'm just curious because
I don't really want to set out to like do
anything. No.
To try to like put it in any sort of box, I guess.
Okay.
And I've always been like that.
Yeah. No, I gather that. I can tell, and I appreciate that too. That's for sure. Is there one song that we can go out on from this record? If you could pick one, which one would it be?
Maybe Kill Scene. That's the poppiest one.
Doesn't have to be poppy.
No, any like
Kill Scene would be fun. Okay. Well, what inspired the name, and do you want to say anything about the recording? It was
like, I don't know.
I think that was developing. It developed on maybe our first European tour. Yeah. Like there was a sense that something clicked while we were trying to play a few things, and Kill Scene came out of that. That's one that I think was maybe one of our most collaborative.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's hear it. Shall we play it for people that are listening?
Yeah,
okay, this is Kill Scene from the new Joyful Talk record. Dicey, Jay, thank you so much for being on my show.
Thank you.
And I wish you the best of luck with everything going forward.
Right on.
Thanks a lot.
Special thanks again to Jay and Dicey from Joyful Talk for being on this, the 441st episode of Creative Control, which is part of the Entertainment One podcast network, and it's available on all iOS and Android platforms, and also on things like Spotify, YouTube, and Audio Boom as well. If you can't find an episode that you've heard about and are looking for, and it's not available to you on any of those platforms, or if you want to learn more about me, sign up for my regularly scheduled newsletter, please visit vishkhanna.com. You can like Creative Control on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at vishcreative or at vishkhanna. Listen to a radio show version of Creative Control on Wednesdays at noon Eastern Standard Time around the world at cfru.ca or on an actual radio at 93.3 FM if you're in or near Guelph. Also, please visit patreon.com/Creative Control to make a flexible monthly donation to keep this podcast going. I appreciate everyone who does this. It really means the world. And it covers some costs and all those sorts of things that I don't really like to talk about, but it's true. It does help. So if you'd like to help with the show on a financial level, and again, it's very flexible. You can change it whenever you like. You can pledge whatever you want. Visit patreon.com/Creative Control. If you'd like me to send you a T-shirt that represents the show in exchange for this, I'm happy to do so. Just send me a message when you get on Patreon there, and we'll figure it out. Thanks again to the in-kind supporters of this show, Pizza Trokadero, The Bookshelf, Planet Bean Coffee, and Grandad's Donuts, and again, CFRU 93.3 FM. Also, my pal Jim Guthrie, he lets me use a song of his, the instrumental version of The Rest Is Yet to Come, that ends the show each week. You can learn more about Jim and his voice-oriented and instrumental-oriented music at jimguthrie.org. Finally, thank you very much for listening to this show so regularly and subscribing to the podcast on whatever platform you use, and really just telling your friends and your neighbors and your family about the show. That's a big help, just spreading the word about it. I think it's a grassroots show that way, and I do appreciate you doing that. I hear that happens sometimes, and it really does mean a lot. So thank you for that. And if you can't do any of those things, just thanks for listening to the show. That's enough, really. All right, I gotta go. I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.